This is TJ Lane. On February 27, 2012, Lane shot 6 students at Chardon High School in Chardon, Ohio. 3 of them died. Witnesses said that the shooter only had a grudge against one of these victims. There were 2 other wounded students who were also hospitalized, one of whom sustained several serious injuries that resulted in permanent paralysis. The 5th student sustained a minor injury, and the 6th sustained a superficial wound. By the evening of February 27th, authorities had found out that the suspect was Thomas M. TJ Lane III, a 17-year-old male juvenile who used a bus at Lake Academy Alternative School. Lane used a .22 caliber handgun. Lane was soon arrested by police near his car, which was parked outside the school. The charges of aggravated murder, attempted murder, and felonious assault were ultimately indicted by Lane. Because of his age, he was held as a juvenile until the prosecution and court decided whether he would be tried as an adult. Judging by his court video, Lane did not regret his actions. He baffled the jury with his defense, likely knowing he would lose the case. He jokingly wore a shirt reading "killer" and treated the whole ordeal as if it were a joke by smiling and cussing at the victims' families. This is Shondell Jackson. In 2010, Jackson, who was 19 at the time, was found guilty of first-degree intentional homicide and robbery in the case of 21-year-old University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee student Nathan Potter. Nathan Potter was walking home to his apartment when Shondell Jackson and 20-year-old Derek Thomas attempted to rob him. Nathan Potter wasn't carrying any money. In a fit of rage, Shondell shot Nathan Potter, which led to his ultimate death. The authorities were eventually called to the scene, but it was already too late. During the trial over the victim's death and his crime, Jackson showed no remorse or sorrow and even smiled at the victim's family when he was escorted out of the courtroom. Jackson became violent after his sentencing. As the news reporter said, the police in the courtroom acted quickly, as if they had expected it, and they did because the convicted killer had acted that way during his trial. Officers had to restrain him using pepper spray. Just moments before, Shondell Jackson's attorney had asked Judge Dallett to consider the 19-year-old's youth and, as the attorney puts it, his lack of impulse control. At the trial of Shondell Jackson, members of his family stood in the back of the courtroom and taunted Nathan Potter's family. A woman yelled towards the Potters. Another woman yelled toward Potter's mother and father, who held each other and wept. During the trial, Nathan Potter's father, John Potter, addressed Judge Rebecca Dallett, saying, "There's nothing that can be said to bring back our Nathan," but he asked for punishment to fit the horrific crime. "Is there such a thing as pure evil? We think so," he inquired. Shondell Jackson was convicted of first-degree intentional homicide and robbery and sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole. Jackson will serve his sentence until he dies. He's currently 31 years old and has already served 12 years in jail. This is Dante Wright. He was convicted for the murder of 18-year-old Jordan Clee in Ann Arbor, Michigan. He was charged with armed robbery, conspiracy to commit armed robbery, felony firearm possession, and second-degree murder. Dante Wright was sentenced to a prison term of 23 to 50 years for the murder of Jordan Clee. At a hearing, Wright admitted that he and 2 other friends were attempting to rob 18-year-old Jordan Clee when he shot and killed him. In a courtroom in Washtenaw County, Michigan, Wright smiled and almost laughed as his victim's family read impact statements. A family member read in court on behalf of the victim's grieving mother.
"I've lost my only child, my son, my baby, my friend. More than that, I've lost laughter and love. I no longer have the hope of having grandchildren."
Afterward, the defendant, 17-year-old Dante Wright, addressed the court by saying,
"I just want to tell y'all, I'll be home soon. R.I.P. Keon. I love my family."
Dante Wright's attitude didn't sit well with the judge, who asked prosecutors if the sentencing agreement was too light. 22nd Circuit Court Judge David Schwartz said,
"Watching you sit there, smile and laugh and shake your head like this was no big deal, I'm very tempted to just say, I'm not going to accept this sentence agreement. We'll go to trial, and if you're convicted of felony murder, you'll go to prison for the rest of your life. That means you'll die there. That's what I'm tempted to do."
The family is reported to have asked that the case does go to trial because they wanted to move forward during the brief recess. After the break, Dante Wright's lawyer apologized on his behalf, saying that he has emotional issues and that he didn't mean to hurt anyone by smiling. This is Anthony Rodriguez. He was 18 years old on parole when he robbed, kidnapped, and sexually assaulted a 25-year-old woman in Martin Luther King Jr. Park, dragging her 105 feet into a bathroom. According to reports, Anthony had previously been arrested for violence, but this appears to be his first arrest for sexual assault. Rodriguez's incident took place in March 2012, and he was arrested May 4th, 2012, after DNA evidence linked him to the crime. The Kirk County District Attorney said that Anthony had been quiet the whole time, but that changed when the judge sentenced him to 25 years to life. Rodriguez immediately began to speak to the judge with tears in his eyes, uttering profanity and calling the ruling unfair. He was reluctantly obliged to take a seat. After the trial, Anthony Rodriguez was clearly not happy with the outcome, and neither was his family. His mother said that he did not deserve life in prison and that the judge made a mistake in sentencing him to such a heavy sentence. Mike Zarate Jacobo, who was arrested for sexual assault, was also arrested for the same crime. He remained in a downtown jail for 35 days until DNA evidence cleared him. Instead, the evidence implicated 18-year-old Anthony Rodriguez in the crime. This is Michael Swanson. He was 17 when he went on a killing spree of 2 Iowa gas station attendees in the span of an hour. Swanson went to the Crossroad gas station on US Highway 18 in Algona, Iowa, just after 9 p.m. on November 15, 2010. Wearing a ski mask and asked the clerk for cash and cigarettes. Swanson shot her, even though she had complied with the request. About an hour later, Swanson shot and killed Sheila Myers, 61, at a come-and-go convenience store in Humboldt. The teenager told the Des Moines Register that he shot both clerks intentionally to prevent them from calling authorities or identifying him. There was no link found between the stores where the shootings occurred, and Swanson acted alone. He declined to disclose some details about the shootings, including whether anyone else was in the stores at the time and why Swanson was in Iowa. Swanson was arrested at McDonald's in Webster City, about 60 miles from where the first shooting occurred. While both victims followed his request but were killed anyway, it was clear that murder was Michael Swanson's primary goal. Michael Swanson was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of burglary. All allegations of Swanson's motives were answered by himself. As one of the victim's daughters gave a victim impact statement, Swanson sits completely emotionless.
How could you do what you did to my mom and my family? I want to know if you're even sorry. Are you sorry for what you did? My mom was not only completely 100% innocent, but she was also a defenseless woman when you came in with that gun. You said you did it for cigarettes and money and so no one could identify you, but I think that's a lie. You did it, as you later said on, that it was so you could feel powerful.
During the sentence, Michael Swanson smiled and laughed.
Cold-blooded murder, young man. You are dangerous. You are unpredictable. Prison for the rest of your life.
Swanson was also accused of the attempted murder of an individual detainee in Coralville in 2015. On November 13, 2014, Swanson reportedly cut the neck of an individual detainee, leaving the prisoner with 15 facets. He was sentenced to 25 extra years in jail in 2015 after the attempted murder. Swanson won't be eligible for parole until he reaches mid-90s in 2089.